makes you such an amazing and inspiring thought leader and leader of new movements, I think, Donna. One reason we wanted to talk with you today. One of the 3 books that we wrote, the most recent, is in the process of being developed for a 2nd edition. It's called Admired, Nobody Does It Alone.
Yes, totally.
That's when Vinny and I just partnered and wrote this book, and it was our first New York Times bestseller. And the premise of it is, other than the fact that I married up, is to have a body of knowledge that is really around understanding collaboration at scale, and how the thinking among new leaders is when you're having to reinvent yourself all the time. The only way to do that is to make it about us instead of me. So what we're working on, Donna, I'd love to get your sensibilities about how, if you were onboarding a new leader in any of the organizations that you've touched, what do you wish you knew about leadership, about leading an organization when you came into that role for the first time after having served in a very different capacity when you were an athlete, when you were working on a team there? Today, we're going to explore a little bit some of your interests in that regard, why you made those choices. And I just thought we'd start with, what do you wish you knew about leading and managing that you know today that was, I imagine, very fresh when you started out?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I don't know that I've ever made the huge distinction between managing or leading a company versus managing and leading a life where I was always a person that was doing something that hadn't been done before. So I was always put in a position where I had to be comfortable with the fact that nobody thought I should be doing what I was doing. I had to always have this sense of belief in myself that this is what I should be doing. And it's kind of, I liken it to this. I was never the tallest athlete. I played basketball. I wasn't the fastest, right? I didn't get the most rebounds, but there was nobody who would outwork me. You can work as hard, I can give you that. And what I learned through that process is that you develop these muscles that teach you that you have more to give than you ever thought possible. And that is something I've drawn on in every sense. So when we think of classic leadership, and you're thinking, well, I understand that this person's here and this person's here. Now, I kind of approach it in a way, and we talked a little bit about the system, in a belief of capability, in a belief of being able to be a team member. I played a team sport, and that we can work it out and I can facilitate this team moving forward together. I wouldn't call myself a leader. Maybe sometimes I was the captain, but that felt so comfortable to me that when I moved into each of my next slots, all the way through being a commissioner, I didn't feel uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
It does. It seems amazing because most people are overwhelmed at the prospect, even with the great achievement and impact they'd had in their prior life. When they choose what's next, there's usually a certain notable insecurity around developing those new muscles for the first time, and maybe not being instantly as world-class as we were, had developed over many, many years to be a professional basketball player.
No, but and I understand that, right? And I never went in thinking I was world-class. I thought I came in with capabilities to figure it out. And when I look to bring someone into an organization that I'm leading, I want people who can figure it out, who are comfortable with not knowing, look at the time we're living in, and then say, okay, let's figure this out, because everything is always new in so many different situations.
So with that insanity, with that over-exuberance that really allowed you to achieve a professional level of game, then to have to face what is inevitable about making a transition and deciding what's next. You're a person with many choices. You already had some influence and impact because of that. How did you go about choosing what's next? Because you could do a lot of stuff. You'd have many choices and many.
Here I am, I'm playing professional basketball. It's a dream come true.
Yeah.
I loved every second of it, all of the wonder, joy, teamwork, pain, heartache, all of it. And yes, it was time to leave. And I was still pretty young. I was 23 years old. And I'd already done I'm done with my first career. I was sad. I felt like I hadn't even reached my potential. Like when I grew up in my era, we didn't play basketball from the time we were 6 or 7. We came to the game later. We didn't get great coaching till we were later. And I had one of the best coaches in the country, but I was not ready to move on.
So how did you know that it was time to move on?
The league folded. There were no more employment opportunities. It was over. I was one of 10 players, I believe they told me, or a dozen, that played in every single season. We had 3 seasons. I played in all 3 seasons. I played in 3 different cities. And then the league folded. And there's an article, I should send it to you, in the New York Times that I wrote. Here I am, washed up at 23. What do I do? I went to graduate school to be a social worker.
Okay. And was that after the
basketball?
No, it was before. So I went to undergraduate. I played on one of the best teams in the nation.
Right.
Made history, played in Madison Square Garden, first women's game ever. I graduated, again, a moment of like, oh my God, I can't stop playing basketball. They're gonna start this league. I had gotten into social work school. Again, everyone told me you'll never get in, you're too young. They took me. I said, what do you mean? I know everything about the world.
Of course.
And after a year of that, I thought that was a little much. I can always go back to school, but I could never play basketball again. And so let me commit myself to playing basketball, but also commit to changing the world, being somebody of value in the world. And I realized sports is incredible that way. And so in a sense, I feel like I have realized my social work.
Because that was a platform. And so having migrated into this professional sports platform, and as you said, starting the cables show, what was next from there? How did you make the decisions next? Because you could have gone many directions.
I really did love the media and the communications. I spent a lot of time with the sports writers. I spent a lot of time with the television people. And I said, I really like this. And so I went to New York, and eventually I got a job as a PA, production assistant at ABC Sports, at the height of ABC Sports. I did a little announcing work on the phone, like a gambling phone thing on the side. And one thing led to another, and eventually they hired me. And it was great. It was great. It was great. And I worked and learned so much about production. And I also worked in a big company. Right? This is ABC Sports, then it's Cap Cities. This is big company work. And you learn how big companies work and how they interact with each other, how the different departments work, the politics of all of that. You begin to take that in. And then I got recruited. And I got recruited to go to a startup. In a sense, it was rainbow programming. So today it would be analogous to an internet company, a digital company. It was wonderful. And then from there, I got recruited again to go to a real startup, which was the beginning of PGA Tour productions. So there was NBA Entertainment, and there was, NBA Entertainment was an NFL Films. So this was going to be it. I interviewed with a former professional golfer and the former president of CBS, and they said, will you come run our production company? I'm in my mid-20s. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I did. And I ran it for a couple of years, and the guy was very volatile, very, very, very volatile. And I said, you know what? People were calling me to do all sorts of things. I'll just start my own company. And I did. And I realized, like, this is so valuable. And I talk about this, and I don't know if I had an enormous experience. I worked for a big company.
Yes.
Big company thinking, big company organization, big company motivation, big operations. I worked for a mid-sized company that's kind of new. Different mentality, again, different operational procedures. Then I worked for a startup, but ultimately I worked out of my own pocket. And I learned so much. I think you learn about business working out of your own pocket, especially when you don't have much in your pockets.
I bet.
Absolutely.